service, which is called Active Directory service. Hit that one. It will get expanded now. Just double click the spsdemo.com. All right. So it has been expanded now. There are so many things which we are able to see, just like a folder, right? Correct? You see there are so many folders, built-in, computer,
Yeah.
domain controller, so on, so on, so on. Let's say for an example, I have a new department which is called HR department within my company. So how I'm going to represent my HR department in this particular service, which is called Active Directory. Just right click that your domain name, which is called spsdemo.com, which I have make it like SharePoint service demo.com. Just right click that spsdemo.com on your left hand side. Yes, just right click. All right, you get a lot of options. One option is called new. Hit that one. All right, here you get an option called create a computer group, so on, so on, so on. Scroll down till last till you see a user, which is the second one last. All right, perfect. Or let's say for an example, I want to create a user called any name which you suggest. Take it as John. Just make it John. Give the first name John. Give the last name Day.
What was it?
Yeah, that's fine. DEY may work fine. All right. And give the login name John Day, or maybe John.day, or only John, whatever you like. All perfect. Now look at that, what their login name is. John.day @ xpsdemo.com. Perfect. Go ahead and say next. All right. It is asking that when the John will log in, what password the John is going to use. I have to define a password. Just type here password @ 123, which is a standard password across Microsoft when we do a lab. Strictly, this password should not be used in production, but yes, for a lab, I am all okay. Wonderful. Remove the checkbox. User must check password. Next, log on and hit next. Just click next. All perfect. Click finish. Okay, just hit OK. Just go back. I think in a password, make something capital, maybe P, maybe capital P @ So make password. Yeah, the second one also make. All right, looks fine. Say next. Wow, you have a John Day, which is a user who can log into any service within my company depending upon the entitlement. Entitlement means whether the John is authorized or not authorized. But this John belong to which department? I do not know. So first we have to create a department. Department is called in this organizational unit. Just right click your again SPS demo. Repeat the same process. Go to the new. This time we are going to select organizational unit. Yes. Make it a department like HR department. All right, that's perfect. It's fine. Now you have an HR department. Again, click your domain name, which is spsdemo.com. and just drag and drop this user to this particular department. You have a John Day, yes, say yes. Looks perfect. Click HR now. All right. So what does it means now? All the user which we are going to configure to use my SharePoint, to access the document stored in a SharePoint, to access a site which is created in SharePoint, all the user are going to control by this service. And what is the name of this service? ONQ Active Directory. Correct? So it must be that within your organization, you should have Active Directory if you want to work on SharePoint. And you must use your own domain name, user and password to log into your SharePoint server. So the very first component what we have, we call it as a Active Directory, where we are going to define my user, where we are going to define which all user will be part of my Active Directory. So it means that when we have this whole, when we are building this setup, we have to think from three different services point of view. Service number one, before deploying SharePoint, we must have Active Directory. Number two, we must have database. If these two component is not there, you are not going to work on your SharePoint. Then there will be no SharePoint. Means the SharePoint as a server going to use these services in a background. Now, when we have this SharePoint, then SharePoint is going to use these two services in a background. And if there is any problem, happen on a SQL server or Active Directory server, my SharePoint is going to impact. Right? So it means that when we launching the SharePoint, this is the two server which is going to play a pretty important role. Apart from that, now how we are going to access the SharePoint? Monik, you using your SharePoint right now. So how you launch? Are you using any tool or are you using browser?
In the browser.
In the browser. So it means that this SharePoint use the browser. Now, when I say a browser, it means that this SharePoint is going to work on HTTP protocol. Any protocol or any service which use this HTTP protocol, it must use a different component in your operating system. What we call it generally a web server. Now, this is again a pretty important component here. We must have a web server. Since we are using Microsoft, this web server is called IIS, Internet Information Server. So it means that if there is a problem happening in my Internet Information Server, it might also impact the SharePoint access. Right? Correct? So
Yep.
it means that when there is a problem in any of the component, these components all are related to make the SharePoint experience pretty good, okay, bad, or the worst. And depending upon how much thing you configure wonderful list, you have a wonderful document management system, nothing going to satisfy the user just because we as an administrator, we might not use these or we might not fine tune this component, which make my SharePoint a much better experience. So we have seen now that how this particular component is going to work. Let me see how this IIS is going to look like. You still have a control on a queue, so you can click anywhere. Just take the control back. All right. So expand the site. There is something called a site. You are exactly into the web server. And what this web server is? This web server is Internet Information Server. Click that one. Wow. How many sites are you able to see? A
4.
website, right? Hey, here you get your central administration site, the third number, right? Correct, no? If this site is a stop, when I let's say right click and say stop this site, it means that your central administration site is not going to work. When you click that on your right hand side, you have a stop and a start button. Just look at that, right? So when you stop that, what will happen? This site is unavailable now. Correct? So it means that somewhere this is also a pretty important component for us. If there is any problem happen here, my site is not available at all. Maybe my user site is running because your user site is running on SharePoint port 80. But my admin site is stopped. I cannot get an access. So let us start this site now. Perfect now. So it means that when we say we are going to work on SharePoint, two fundamental components, we must understand that which is very, very tightly related with SharePoint. First one, Active Directory. Second one, web server. First one, Active Directory. Second one, web server. And the third component, which we call it SQL database. Right? So what all three components we have? Active Directory, web server, and the next one is SQL server. On top of that, your operating system. And above and all, your actual server, which can be a virtual machine, which can be a physical machine. Yes, being a SharePoint architect, being a SharePoint consultant, we may have to focus on the SharePoint itself, but if any issues come, to approach the next team, we must have to tell, hey guys, I think that there is some problem in SQL server. Can you rectify it? Because of your SQL server, my SharePoint is not running correctly. My user is not able to get the access of the SharePoint. Hey, Active Directory guys, can you perform some kind of a troubleshooting so that I can fix the issues related to the access of my SharePoint? So it means that three major component is not in your hand. Where the data store? SQL server. Where the user and rights and permission store? Active Directory. Where the SharePoint related access services, which is work on HTTP protocol, store in IIS server. So what is left with you? Left with you only the configuration part of your SharePoint application. So basically what we play here, we most of the time, we do the task which is related to the configuration of my SharePoint related services. But how this configuration going to work and what the user experience is, it's moreover dependent on three important components: Active Directory, SQL Server, and an IIS. If all this is worked pretty fine, we can say that whatever we configure in SharePoint for the user, the list, the table, the document management system, everything going to work pretty well. Everything going to work pretty fine, right? So once again, let me revisit everything here. What is the first use of SharePoint? SharePoint can be used within an organization as a document management system. In a document management system, it gives me a feature to store my document, share the document, maintain the versioning of the document, and also on top of that, protection against unauthorized access of my document. And this is exactly a very first and widely used feature of SharePoint. Second thing, which SharePoint can be used as an intranet portal, where department like an HR, which exactly control this intranet portal, they keep uploading and updating different kind of a content here, content which might belongs to a company, which might belong to an individual achievement, birthday, any kind of an important announcement. Many companies use this intranet portal even to approve the leave. Some company I have seen that they use this intranet portal where employee can go and check their payslip. Or we can use SharePoint as a blog or something else. And when we say a SharePoint, basically these are the major component which is going to make my SharePoint overall services to work fantastic. First, server itself. Second, OS which install on top of my server. Then the SharePoint as an application. Next, SharePoint use web server, which is an IIS, which control how this SharePoint user site, team site, administration site going to work. Then your SharePoint use Active Directory, which is another application which is running here, which control all your user related information and more than that. And then we have a database. This database basically store all your document, all your site, your list, whatever you create in the SharePoint into the database. So when we see all this information and when we able to manage all this information, we can think that yes, perfectly, I have configured my SharePoint pretty right, pretty correct. Let's see a very small video which is going to tell all thing about us, how we are going to use the SharePoint. Just hold for a moment. Let me come back.
Teamwork isn't about where you are. It's about being.
I hope the sound is coming to you.
Yep.
Yeah, that's all right.
Teamwork isn't about where you are. It's about being connected. And with SharePoint Online, you'll see how to create, store, and share content on the web wherever you are. Build intranet sites and create pages, document libraries, and lists to share information across your company. Then add web parts like text, images, and documents to format and customize your content. Showcase important visuals, news, and updates in a modern layout with communication sites, or connect all the right people for a project with team sites. Discover, follow, and search for sites, files, and people, and manage your day-to-day routine with workflows, forms, and lists and libraries. Sync and store your files in the cloud so anyone can securely work with you. And with the mobile app, catch up with group news on the go. Learn more.
All right. So it means that what exactly try to elaborate that when we have a SharePoint, this SharePoint going to provide lot many feature. What we exactly assume, what we exactly need to think, because this is a productivity application which is developed by Microsoft, and it is now have a long journey from where it has started. Now we have reached to a point where we say that we have so many things within the SharePoint which we can leverage as a customer, we can leverage as an organization to speed up or to increase the collaboration feature. And what else? SharePoint, this specific SharePoint, they say that it is available now both on premises, where you are going to install all the server like operating system, install SQL Server, install Active Directory, install SharePoint, or ready-made available on online, which we call it SharePoint Online. SharePoint now today's in 2019 offer me a two-way to do my job. First, we can go and install and configure SharePoint in my office. We generally called SharePoint on premises. Or we can leverage the SharePoint, no installation required. Just you go and configure the feature which you like on cloud. So one, we call it SharePoint Online or SharePoint on-prem. On-prem, everything is under your control, but you need to install all these applications and work on. And then we have something which is called SharePoint Online. Both have same feature, no difference. Here you are maintaining everything for yourself. Here infrastructure maintained by Microsoft. You have only to maintain your own services. What all the feature, what all the services is required within the SharePoint. So we as a customer, now we have an option that we can run the SharePoint both on premises or on cloud. Or now, if I want to run certain feature on premises, certain feature on cloud, we can even do that. So it means that it is going to give me a feature that where I can connect my on premises with on cloud. So maybe I am using SharePoint Online for my intranet portal, but SharePoint on-prem for as my DMS portal, and both work together. Both my SharePoint Online, SharePoint on-prem with two different features work together. Or we can do other kind of an integration with online and on premises. The SharePoint is also now available as a hybrid format, because we live in 21st century world. We want both. Microsoft said, no problem. Want both? I give you both. SharePoint on-prem, SharePoint online. So you have both the feature which you can leverage, which you can access the capability, and you can work upon that. Now, this is what exactly makes the overall the picture of SharePoint, how we are going to leverage this SharePoint as an organization, as a customer, and how we are going to use this SharePoint to provide the feature, to provide the service which exactly my user look like, which my user expect. If my user expectation that they want to looking for some service from the IT team, that how we can share the document, yes we can. If one of my user looked at, I am looking for a service where I can make a company announcement, where I can showcase our company events, where I can upload the photographs for my company user or my employee to visualize, or I can use as a blog. So all this which we see here is going to make this SharePoint is a more collaborative platform to manage, more collaborative platform to implement. For what? For my own purpose. So far, it's all clear?
Yep.
All right. So let's have a quick 5-minute break. Let's join back and we'll try to leverage some feature of this SharePoint as well. Perfect?
All right.
All right.